Yo guys, what is going on? Got a tier list video for you guys talking about all the different option cards you might be able to run in your deck for the BT10 format. Just want to talk about a lot of the powerful removal cards, utility cards, and cards that will just generally win you games or are definitely powerful and ready to include in your strategy. So guys, let's go ahead and get into it. As always, this is definitely a subjective list. It's also not a comprehensive guide, so if I missed any option cards, let me know down in the comments below. But hopefully you can get maybe some spicy text or any ideas for your deck out of this video. But without further ado, the first card I do want to talk about is going to be Sunrise Buster. So Sunrise Buster is an absolute crazy card, guys. We know how powerful this card is because of the fact that Yellow Hybrid played it in the kind of Japanese metagame more so than us, but also that the Crossheart deck can really take advantage of this because they are running yellow eggs and red tamers to make the color requirement pretty negligible, and then of course being able to minus something 3,000 for each tamer you've got on board, as well as put another tamer on field and get the on play. This card is easily S tier. I think one of the best option cards in the entire format. Definitely a really powerful card to contend with. Next card is going to be Ice Wall. This card I think will just be good until the end of time. Like there's basically, if you're playing a blue deck, there's almost no reason to not run Ice Wall. The only kind of exceptions I've seen is like Armor Rush, for example, where like Ice Wall is a defensive card kind of, so you don't necessarily need it, but even then, this card will just be good forever. I think Bandai really knocked the ball out of the park when they were creating Ice Wall a little bit too hard, if you ask me, hence why it's only limited to one. But it's really powerful one. Next card I want to talk about is going to be Rattle Star. If you guys aren't familiar with this card, it's a little bit of an older one back from BT6, where you basically get to bounce back a level 5 or lower Digimon to your opponent's hand, but if they have 3 or more Digimon in play, you get to just bottom deck something instead. This saw a lot of play in BT7 as well. I think it is a really powerful tech card for the BT10 format, maybe played in something like Blue Flare, just because bouncing and returning to bottom deck get around the material save effect. So being able to get rid of a level 5 or lower, hence your Shoutmon and cross 4s and cross 5s, this card will not only be able to get rid of that Digimon, but also prevent the material save effect. So I actually think, depending on the matchup, this is a really strong card. Really powerful against all the Digicross decks. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in the A tier. Really solid choice overall. Next card is going to be Jackraid. So this card is basically only ever played in like a specific type of deck. It really only played in like purple loop decks. We saw it in Lilith Loop, really powerful in decks that can get cards in your trash really quickly, something like Beelzemon possibly. But of course in Minerva Loop is another deck that is prominent in the set 10 meta, where this card can just absolutely win you games. So I'm going to go ahead put this in A tier. Again, it's really limited in its applications because you only basically played in a couple decks, but it is just really powerful for those reasons. Next card is going to be Crimson Blaze. This is another card that we've seen kind of pop back up due to the metagame. It is a very powerful main effect where you can reduce its memory cost from your hand for each of your opponent's Digimon, potentially being able to play it for like 3 to even 2 sometimes. Prevents your opponent from going wide because it punishes them by deleting all their 6k or lower, and then it also floodgates them out of playing via effects. So that is just a really powerful card against things like Mastamon as well as Minerva Loop. This is an auto win against Minerva Loop. I've tested the matchup. It's very difficult. They essentially just have to pass their turn. So for those reasons, I'm going to go ahead and put it in our S tier here. This card is just absolutely crazy, and if you're playing a red deck, you should consider playing Crimson Blaze, especially if it's a slower one, maybe something like Black War Greymon or something like that, which struggles when your opponent goes wide. So this is definitely a powerful option for that. Fireball is another card that offers a lot of utility. So this card has a couple of different effects. So it basically, during when you activate main, you get to delete something with 3k or lower, or if you didn't delete something, you get to trigger draw 2 instead. So either being able to clear out a rookie or drawing 2. Sign me up because this card's crazy. I absolutely love it in the Crossheart deck, just being able to out your opponent's floodgates that stop the Digicross mechanic, being able to fill up your hand. I think overall this card has just it's just proven itself to be a really powerful card. I'm probably gonna put this. I would say S tier. This card just offers so much utility for only a 2 cost. I think it is really powerful. The red option cards kind of taking over the game right now. I think they've just been absolutely amazing as of recent. So the next one we're going to talk about is going to be Dead or Alive. This card is situationally pretty strong. I've seen it in a couple of different lists, like Purple List, Minerva Loop, as well as Lilith Loop back in the day. I do think it's definitely a security bomb. However, it is, again, limited in its applications, and it's very situational because you need either a Lucemon in your trash already, or like a level 5 or lower. You typically always want to bring back Lucemon Chaos Mode, but there have been times testing out this in like in the past Cherubimon or something like Minerva Loop, where you just don't get to your pieces early enough in the trash. So if your opponent hits this and it's like this first security, it just does nothing and it feels really bad. However, being able to have the option to pop tamers is pretty strong in the upcoming formats. So I'd probably put this at like a B tier. Like, it is a really powerful card, but just the downside is really that it takes setup. It's situationally good, and typically in competitive games you don't want cards that are situationally good. This will always lose out to cards that you can just activate like whenever. Card removal cards that you can just play without restriction. So I'll put Dead or Alive in B tier, but definitely something to consider. Howling Crusher. I was talking about this with some of my buddies, and it realistically is a pretty strong card. We saw Three Musketeer messing around with this card this format as well as last format. It's really powerful against stuff like X Antibody that relies on a lot of materials to gain their bonus effects, stuff like Dorugreymon, the Oriumon, etc. So being able to just get rid of all their sources and stuff like Wargrey X and Metal Garurumon X as well, having the protection effects, being able to get around all that off of just one single card is really powerful. Not to mention in the upcoming BT10, in the BT10 format, this is really good because it gets rid of all of the materials underneath your opponent's Digicross Digimon. So, for example, if you get rid of the materials underneath all their Shoutmons, they're essentially just left with a vanilla that can't trigger the material save. It doesn't gain the rush or anything. It doesn't have Sec Attack +1, or I guess it would still have, if it's like a Cross 5, it would still have Sec Attack +1, but not for like the Cross 4 that has to have specific materials to gain it, like has to have 4 materials for Tai to give it a Sec Attack +1. But you guys get my drift, where you basically just take out all their bonus effects, and then if their Digimon dies, they really don't get any value off of it. So they're losing their resources because they're not constantly getting those materials back underneath their tamer. So the only real downside about this card is that you're essentially limited to playing Three Musketeers. I guess you could probably play this in Blue Flare, but paying 7 just to get rid of materials is really terrible, I think. So I'm going to put this in like... I'll put this in Copium tier for now. A C for Copium. I think it's a really good card, but I honestly can't say too much just because it's very limited in what you can do. And the only deck you can play it in is Three Musketeers. And I honestly don't know how good Three Musketeers is going to be in this format. So anyways, that's Howling Crusher. Let's go back over here. I actually missed this one. Wyvern's Breath is another really powerful option card, minus 15k on one of your opponent's Digimon. However, that does still trigger like on deletion effects and stuff. And in this meta, DP reduction, while powerful, stuff like Sunrise Buster is really good. Sunrise Buster also does, for the most part, in most situations, it does the same thing as Wyverns, except for a 5 cost, and also gets you a tamer. The only real scenario where this is better is if you're facing a 1-stack deck, something like a Grandis or an Alphamon. But even Alphamon, they can get around the DP reduction. Magnamon X can get around that DP reduction. So there are definitely counters to this. I actually don't really think Wyvern's Breath is that good just for the 8 cost and the fact that Sunrise Buster is going to be much more prominent. So I'll probably put this in... B tier. I think it has some applications, but probably isn't going to be too widely played. So going off the DP reduction, we got Flame Hell Scythe next. This has been really popular in Mastamon as well as security control, just being able to minus 6,000 on something, bring back a Magnet Angemon, recover 1, etc. So again, something like Crossheart, it can kill one of their Digimon and then heal you one as well, making up for the fact that they are swinging pretty early. So I still think Flame Hell Scythe is a really powerful card. I would probably put this A tier, like high A tier, maybe S, but I just don't think it's as good because of the fact that material save exists now. So generally cards that can get around that are good, or other cards that have crazy effects like Crimson Blaze or Sunrise Buster. But Flame Hell Scythe, again, really only playable in a couple decks, but still really solid card overall. The next card is going to be Megadeth. Now, Megadeth is a very efficient source of removal. It is only a 5 cost, but you essentially just get to return any Digimon to their opponent's hand, as provided you have the blue and green sources in play. So in Imperial and Armor Rush, this is really powerful. I've even seen some lists of like Blue Flare teching this in, just because it's really powerful to be able to get around the material save effect. And for only a 5 cost, this also gets around other protection from deletion effects, things like Armor Purge, etc. So I honestly think in the next format, and even in the past formats, Megadeth has just been an absolutely crazy removal card. Not only is it a very powerful effect, but it's just a very efficient card, and I think that is really one of the key factors in a lot of these really powerful option cards. Sunrise Buster, for example, is also only a 5 cost, but then plays you a Tamer, which a lot of times is going to cost 4 to play with to begin with. Crimson Blaze is cost 6, but you can reduce the cost pretty often by the fact that your opponent will also have like a lot of Digimon on play. So these cards, just because they're so efficient, are really powerful. Speaking of efficient option cards, we got the Blazing Memory Boost, the new card out of set 10 for the Blue Flare archetype. If you don't know what this card does, actually, do have the English version over here. It's going to be revealed top 6. You get to add 2 cards with a Blue Flare, so it's a +2, and then you get to play a Kiriha from amongst those cards to your battle area at no memory cost. So the fact that you get to play a 4-cost blue tamer, 4-cost tamer, and get a +2 is just really ridiculous. So it's already on par with Sunrise Buster in the efficiency sense. But not only that, the delay effect just gains you 2 memory. So it has that typical memory boost effect of gaining 2 memory, as if you needed any more value off of that. It is also a Blue Flare card. It has Blue Flare in the traits, so it is searchable off of the Blue Flare archetype cards, things like the Blue Greymon. So having Blazing Memory Boost is just really crazy. I honestly think this is like on par with Reinforced Memory Boost. I think this is an easy S tier. This card is just absolutely crazy, guys. Another card out of BT10 is going to be Grandisol. Again, have the English version up here if you're not familiar with what this card does. If you use this card, if you have 2 or more suspended green Digimon, you get to reduce the cost of this by 2. So in something like Bloom Lord, you can pretty easily get this off to be a cost 6. You get to suspend a Digimon and then return one of your opponent's suspended Digimons to the bottom of its owner's deck. So it's essentially a Megadeth that costs a little bit more, but it bottom decks it instead of returning it to the hand. So this is a really powerful effect. Again, the theme is non-destroying, non-deleting effects are really powerful in this meta, and they kind of just have generally been in the past. But this card is really powerful. Now, the only real downside is that it costs 8, but I think the fact that you can mitigate that a little bit, just because if you're playing, a green deck, you can typically have a lot of suspended Digimon in play. So I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say this is going to be A tier. I think this is a really powerful removal card, and finally glad that green is getting some like actual removal cards instead of things that just suspend, because sometimes you need to just get things off the field. So in that similar vein, we got Groundfang. This card is also an 8-cost green, but it has the effect of where you get to return one of your opponent's suspended Digimon as well as one of their suspended Tamers to the bottom of the deck. So it doesn't guarantee you suspension, where Grandisol is suspend something and then bottom decks is suspended, similar to Megadeth, where you'll basically, the first part lets you do the second part, and so you'll always be able to bottom deck something. This one, your opponent has to have the suspended Digimon, which is typically fine, especially if they're hitting this in security. It'll just bottom deck their Digimon, and then also bottom decking a Tamer is really powerful. So against Crossheart, being able to bottom deck one of their boss monsters and then getting rid of one of their Tamers that's suspended as well as the materials underneath that tamer. I think that is a really, really powerful effect. So if you are playing a green deck this format, I would highly recommend you consider playing one of these cards, or maybe even both of these cards if you feel like it. But I would put I put Groundfang at an A tier. Like it's really, really powerful, and the fact that you don't have to return both things. You don't have to return both a Digimon and a Tamer. You just do as much as possible. So it's a little bit more versatile in that sense, where you get to get rid of Tamers as well. So for that reason, I'm just going to go ahead and put it in A tier. And then I have this other card. I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce this card. If you guys know how to say that, go ahead and let me know in the comments. But this yellow option card from VT10, I had someone, viewer, point this out to me, that this was a pretty solid option against some of the Crossfire decks, because it's got a couple of cool effects. The first effect, I'm not even going to really add that to the value of the card, because having a Digimon with Pulsemon is not really going to be relevant ever. But we got the main effect for 8 costs. If you've got 3 or more security cards, you get to minus 12k on something, and if you've got 3 or fewer, you get to place one of your opponent's Digimon face down on top of their security stack. So you either get a Wyvern's Breath or a Chaos Degrade, both of which are really strong. Now the second part doesn't actually trash it, so you kind of just heal your opponent one, which, I mean, if you're playing a yellow deck, like a slower pace deck, you probably don't really care that much. You just want to get rid of the thing. Especially in security, this is really powerful. Now keep in mind, if you've got 3 exact security cards, you get to trigger both of these effects. So I think that's actually really, really insane. Maybe if you've got cards you're playing like Kazuchimon and other cards like Jet Sylphie, Shikuamon, etc. that can heal you up, and you can kind of manipulate what your security is supposed to be, I can see this being really good. My only issue is that you don't know which effect you're going to get, and both of the effects are good against different things. Now if you have 3 exact, that's really cool, but it's just a little bit situational. I'll put this in B tier just because I think the effect is really, really powerful. But just like I said, the lack of versatility, or I guess it's versatile, but you don't know which effect you're gonna get, and it's just a little bit gimmicky, I think. So I'm going to put that there. So last couple of option cards here. X Antibody, I still think this card is broken. I'm going to put this in S tier. This is one of the best option cards they've ever printed, solely for the effect of being able to put it underneath the Digimon. They get to get Blitz, effectively blitzing into an X Antibody Digimon. It's brought so many archetypes into the tier 1 status. Gaia Force, this card is not super good this format. It honestly hasn't been in a while, unless you're playing a specific type of maybe red-yellow security control or something. Even Gaiamon. Gaiamon is probably one of the only decks that actually still plays Gaia Force. But even then, I've seen lists playing Gaia Force 0. I'd probably still play Crimson Blaze over Gaia Force. So I'll put this as probably B tier. It's solid. It's never going to be a bad card. It's just kill a Digimon. But it's just a little bit expensive, and there's a lot of protection effects and ondulation effects in the game that you don't really want to trigger. HBD, this card, again, is just going to be broken forever, especially in Bloom Lord. This card is ridiculous. When we get Hydramon, it'll be even more so. So this card just has to be an instant S tier. There's a lot of S tiers in this video, okay, guys? This card's crazy. Need I say more? Emergency Program Shutdown. This is a very techie card. I've seen this in a couple of different stun lists. This is really cool against stuff like security control, and maybe against stuff like X Antibody decks where they really need to play an option card. But it really just hasn't seen much competitive play. I don't know. I don't know why this card's not good. Maybe because you have to pay 3. But it is a shut your opponent out of option cards. But maybe there's not that many decks that just solely rely on option cards. And the ones that do will have options and security. So it's not they're losing out too much on just missing a turn. I'm going to put this in C, Copium tier. This card's very cool. In theory, but in practice, it doesn't really come up that much. Similar to that, I'm gonna go ahead and just put Dark Gaia Force right next to it. As much as I love this card, I think Hades Force in BT11 just does everything this card does, but way better. Having a dual red-black option card that costs 8, which again it's a better Gaia Force, but you have to have both colors on, which usually means you're in you've got a Gaiamon on field, or you've got a Tamer plus a black Digimon or something like that, where this card is yeah, it can kill 2 to 3 things, But like, no one's playing this card. No one is playing Dark Gaia Force, unfortunately, guys. I don't think it's that good, as much as I would like it to be. And then our last couple of cards here, Kokaida's Breath, similar to like Rattlestar and Megadeth, the bouncing effects I think are just going to be really strong. Now the only real downside is that it costs 7, so I'll probably still put it in A tier just because you know, 3 Musketeers can take advantage of that. It's still pretty solid overall for having a 7 cost. Just being able to get rid of something on field is okay, but I think Rattlestar in general is just like better. And there's a lot of other option cards like Mega that just do the same job but just more efficiently. And lastly, Chaos Degradation. This card is probably one of the best option cards, best removal option cards we have ever got in the game, guys. If this isn't S tier, I don't know what is. It is everything you want in a removal card. It costs 8, so pretty hefty there. However, unlike stuff like Gaia Force, Dark Gaia Force, this card does not destroy. It has one of the most unique removal effects in the game where it puts something on insecurity and trashes a security card. So you can sequence that as if like, okay, I don't really care about running into monsters, I'm going to put this monster on the bottom and then trash their security card. Maybe it's a tamer or an option card or something like that. So having that utility and being able to get rid of a threat, and there's no protection in the game for this currently, is just absolutely amazing. I think that card will be good for a very long time. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it for the video. If you enjoyed this sort of content, let me know down in the comment section below. And what do you think of the list? Are there any option cards I missed? I think I did a pretty okay job at being able to show representation from a lot of different decks. Kind of black is kind of lacking here, to be honest, because there's really not that many good black option cards. Maybe Iron Fisted is something you could consider. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.